You're about to hear a story that feels like it came straight out of a dark thriller movie, but I promise you, it's terrifyingly real. It all started on a regular afternoon, the kind where nothing seems out of place, nothing seems unusual, until we found the old VHS tape hidden inside the wall of our newly bought house. Now, I want you to imagine for a moment the feeling when you stumble on something ancient, something buried away for decades, tucked out of sight as if someone desperately wanted it to be forgotten. That feeling of unease mixed with curiosity, the way your heart beats a little faster because deep down you already know that whatever's on that tape isn't just home videos of birthday parties or childhood memories. No, it's something much darker. Something that would shake the very foundation of our family. Something that shows my wife, not as the woman I know today, but as a frightened little girl, witnessing a murder. Right now, as you watch this video, you're probably wondering, how did this tape get inside the wall? Who recorded it? And most importantly, why? These are exactly the questions that haunted me from the moment we pressed play. But I'm going to warn you, this isn't just a simple mystery. This story is about secrets buried deeper than the walls themselves. About a past that refuses to stay silent. About a chilling truth staring back from the flickering screen, waiting to be uncovered. So before we dive in, I want you to take a deep breath and prepare yourself to journey with me through a story that blends the eerie nostalgia of lost VHS tapes, the raw innocence of childhood, and the horrifying reality of violence witnessed too young. It's going to be unsettling. It's going to be heart-wrenching. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why we could never look at my wife's childhood the same way again. You came here for answers, and I promise, I'm going to give them to you. Let me take you back to the beginning. It all started when we moved into our new home, a charming old house nestled in a quiet American suburb, the kind you see in movies where families live peaceful lives behind white picket fences. We were excited, full of hope for fresh starts and happy memories. But houses have their own stories, their own echoes from the past, and this one had been standing there for over 50 years, silently witnessing everything that happened inside its walls. What none of us expected was that the house held a secret so disturbing it would change our lives forever. During some renovation work, as we were tearing down a section of the living room wall to install new wiring, the unexpected happened. Behind the drywall, wrapped in a thick layer of plastic and taped carefully, was an old VHS cassette. The label was faded almost beyond recognition, but what caught my attention was the handwritten date, 1979. I brought it to my wife, and the moment she saw it, her face changed. There was something in her eyes, a mix of confusion, fear, and a hint of dread. "Where did you find that?" she whispered. That was the moment I realized this wasn't just any tape. It was connected to her childhood. And what we saw next would turn our understanding of everything upside down. I'm not just telling you this for shock value. I want you to imagine how it feels when a VHS tape, an artifact from the past you barely remember, suddenly becomes the key to a nightmare. We set up the old VCR in the corner of the room. The screen flickered to life, and what played was something that could have been ripped from a crime documentary. The grainy footage showed a young girl, my wife, playing outside a worn-down house, but then the scene shifted. What came next was a scene of horror, a shadowy figure, voices raised in panic, and the unmistakable sound of a gunshot. I won't lie, watching that moment freeze framed on the dusty screen sent chills down my spine. How had this been hidden from us for so long? Why was my wife there as a child, witnessing something so dark? And who was the person behind the camera? These questions gnawed at me, but there was one that scared me the most. Was the murderer someone from her past? Someone she knew? Or worse, someone still out there? Now, I'm sure many of you have seen true crime videos before. You've probably sat through countless retellings of cold cases, creepy mysteries, and unsolved murders. But what makes this story different is that it's not about strangers on the news or forgotten victims buried in files. This story is personal. It's about the people I love. And it's about the invisible scars left by a childhood trauma that never had closure. I want to share every detail with you, because the truth matters. Because sometimes the past has a way of creeping back in when we least expect it. And because, together, we might finally uncover the secrets that have been silenced for decades. But here's the thing, this isn't a story with a neat ending. The more we dug into the mystery of that tape, the more tangled the web became. Old police reports that vanished without explanation, neighbors who refused to talk, and a family history that my wife only half remembered. And through it all, one thing remained terrifyingly clear. The past wasn't done with us yet. As you watch this video, I want you to put yourself in our shoes. Imagine the weight of discovering something so unthinkable hidden inside your own home. The shock, the fear, the desperation for answers. I want you to feel the tension as we try to piece together a puzzle where some pieces might be missing forever. And I want you to ask yourself, if you were in our place, what would you do? Would you keep digging, even if it meant uncovering truths that could destroy everything? I promise you, this journey will take twists and turns you won't see coming. There will be moments of hope, moments of despair, and moments where we question what's real and what's not. But through it all, one thing remains constant: our search for the truth. From the moment we found that VHS tape, everything about our lives felt like it shifted into a different dimension, one where the shadows were longer, the silence heavier, and every little detail seemed to hold a secret just waiting to be uncovered. Before we even pressed play, I kept thinking about my wife's childhood, the parts she'd never spoken about, the memories she claimed were fuzzy or lost. She was always a little guarded about her past, which was strange considering how open we'd always been with each other. But as the tape started playing, I realized why some stories remain locked away, not because they're easy to forget, but because they're impossible to face. Over the past few months, my wife had been acting strangely. It wasn't like her to shut down or avoid conversations, but there were moments when her eyes would glaze over, like she was somewhere else, trapped in a memory she couldn't escape. At first, I thought it was just stress from work or maybe anxiety about moving into a new house. But looking back now, it was the past clawing its way to the surface, and we didn't even know it yet. She had recently reconnected with an old friend from her childhood, someone she hadn't seen in years. Their conversations were mostly innocent, filled with nostalgia and laughter, but sometimes I caught her hesitating, swallowing something she didn't want to say aloud. Who was this friend? What did they know? And why did my wife suddenly feel compelled to dig up the past just as we were settling into our new life? What made the situation even more complicated was that the neighborhood we moved into wasn't as quiet as it seemed on the surface. There were whispers of old crimes, rumors of unsolved cases from decades ago that people either avoided talking about or dismissed as urban legends. Neighbors would give vague answers when asked about the history of the area, and some even warned us not to poke around too much. It felt like the entire town was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. As if the past wasn't done with this place either. I started digging on my own, trying to find out who had lived in our house before us, who might have left that tape behind. Records were incomplete, and what little I found pointed to a family that had mysteriously vanished without a trace in the early 80s. There were rumors about drug deals gone wrong, but nothing concrete. It was all fragments, like pieces of a puzzle scattered in the dark. I tried to bring these questions to my wife, but she'd either change the subject or give me a tight-lipped smile that told me she was hiding something, maybe even from herself. Then came the nights when I heard noises, faint whispers, footsteps in the hallway when no one was there. I told myself it was just the old house settling, or maybe my imagination running wild. But those sounds made me realize that we weren't just dealing with an old tape or a buried secret. Something else was alive in that house. Something connected to the events caught on that grainy footage. It was like the house itself was warning us, reminding us that the past isn't something you can just erase. As we started to share the story with close friends, I noticed their reactions changed too. Some looked at us with sympathy, others with suspicion. There was an unease in the air, like we had stirred something better left alone. And then there were the odd calls, anonymous voices on the phone, silence on the other end, or sometimes just a faint breathing before the line went dead. Were these coincidences? Or were we being watched? Was someone trying to warn us or threaten us? The line between reality and paranoia started to blur. In this tangled web, several people stood out, people who might know more than they were letting on. There was the old neighbor who had lived next door for over 30 years, always watching but never talking. The town's local historian who seemed overly interested in our discovery, eager to help, but unwilling to reveal what he already knew. And then the childhood friend my wife had reconnected with, whose sudden disappearance from social media and unanswered messages added another layer of mystery. Each of them carried shadows of their own, secrets that made me question their motives and what role they might have played in the events from that long-ago summer day. The more I uncovered, the harder it became to trust anyone, including the memories my wife shared. Was her recollection reliable, or had years distorted what really happened? And what about the person behind the camera, filming that terrifying moment? Were they trying to expose a truth or hide a crime? These questions piled up, twisting into a knot of doubt and fear. And yet, despite all the confusion, one thing remained clear. That VHS tape was the key to unlocking a story buried in pain and silence. A story about a little girl who saw something no child should ever see, about a murder that left ripples across time, and about a family struggling to hold on to the fragments of their past before it consumed them completely. As you watch this video, keep your eyes open for the details that don't add up, listen closely to the voices caught on tape, and think about what lies between the lines. This isn't just a story of a crime. It's a story about how the past haunts us, how memories shape us, and how sometimes the truth is more terrifying than any fiction. We're only just beginning to unravel this mystery, and the deeper we go, the darker it gets. So don't turn away now, because the next part will change everything you thought you knew, and the real nightmare is about to begin. Just as we thought we were starting to piece things together, that's when everything began to unravel in the worst way possible. It's strange how the moment you get close to uncovering a truth, shadows seem to rise up around you, blocking the path with silence, threats, and things disappearing without explanation. One day, I was going through some old boxes we'd found tucked away in the attic, hoping to find something, anything that might give us a clue about the people who lived here before. Amongst the dust-covered photos and faded letters, I found what looked like a journal, its leather cover cracked but still intact. My heart raced because it could be the missing piece, a first-hand account that might explain why that VHS tape was hidden behind the wall and who was involved in that tragic night all those years ago. But then, almost as soon as I brought it down from the shelf, it vanished. I searched the entire house, retracing my steps, asking my wife if she'd moved it, but she hadn't seen it. I asked our friends who had come over to help with the renovations, but no one knew anything. It was like the journal had been swallowed by the house itself. What was more unsettling was that the disappearance coincided with a knock on our front door that night, a knock so soft and deliberate it felt like a warning. When I opened the door, there was no one there, only a folded note left on the porch with a chilling message. "Stop digging or you'll regret it." That note shook us. Up until then, I thought the worst was over, that maybe the past was just a collection of broken memories we could carefully unpack. But now it felt like there were forces, people, determined to keep those memories buried. Was it someone connected to that murder? Someone who didn't want the truth to come out? Or was it a stranger who feared the consequences of old secrets resurfacing? We couldn't tell. All I knew was that fear had suddenly become a tangible presence in our home, lurking just beneath the surface. Around the same time, I started noticing strange behavior from someone I never expected to be suspicious, my wife's childhood friend, the one she'd reconnected with. At first, they seemed like a helpful ally, someone who shared stories about their past and encouraged us to keep digging. But the more involved they became, the more I realized they were holding back. They'd dodge questions, suddenly grow distant, and sometimes I'd catch them looking over their shoulder, like they were scared of being watched. There was a coldness beneath their kindness, a hidden edge that didn't fit with the warmth of old friendship. Could they be protecting someone? Or worse, protecting themselves from a truth they were afraid to face? Adding to the tension, an old newspaper clipping surfaced, sent anonymously to my inbox, that hinted at a hidden betrayal involving my wife's family and another household that once lived nearby. The article was heavily redacted, but the words "covered up scandal" and "missing evidence" stood out. It painted a picture of a secret past event that might explain why that VHS tape was buried in the wall in the first place. Suddenly, the murder wasn't just a random act of violence. It was tangled in a web of betrayal, lies, and possibly even corruption that stretched far beyond what we imagined. The lines between victim and perpetrator started to blur, and I realized that in trying to find the truth, we might be stepping into dangerous territory where trust is scarce and allies can quickly become enemies. The more we pushed, the more the obstacles multiplied. Phones would cut out during important calls, emails went unanswered, and once, while going through old police reports, I found one crucial file had been removed without explanation. Someone was actively erasing the trail, cleaning up the past to keep it hidden forever. It was like trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces, and those missing pieces were the ones that mattered most. Even worse, the stress began to take its toll on my wife. Memories she thought she'd buried deep started flooding back in nightmares and flashbacks, making her question her own sanity. She started doubting whether what she saw on that tape was even real or just a childhood nightmare twisted by time. And I could feel myself caught between protecting her and the desperate need to uncover the truth, no matter where it led. And then, just when we thought we had a small breakthrough, a name, a lead on someone who might finally explain everything, a shadowy figure appeared at our doorstep late one night. They didn't say much, only handed us an envelope thick with documents and photographs, then vanished before we could ask a single question. Inside were images that didn't just complicate the story, they rewrote it, hinting at a connection none of us ever suspected, a betrayal so deep it threatened to shatter everything we believed about the past and each other. We're standing at the edge of something big, something dark, but the path forward is clouded by fear, suspicion, and unanswered questions. Who can we trust? What truths are still hiding in the shadows? And how far are we willing to go to bring them to light? Just when we thought the nightmare was contained to our little family, the storm started spreading in ways none of us expected, pulling people we cared about into a web far more tangled than we ever imagined. It was my sister-in-law who first reached out, her voice trembling when she called late one night, barely able to say more than, "You need to see this." When I met her the next day, she handed me an envelope, worn and battered, similar to the one left at our doorstep. Inside were copies of threatening letters, anonymous warnings, messages that echoed the same chilling words we'd received. Stop digging or you'll regret it. But this time, they weren't just warnings. There were photographs, grainy images of my sister-in-law leaving her workplace, and one photo that froze me in place. A picture of my wife, standing outside a nondescript building, eyes wide with fear, taken recently. It was as if someone was watching all of us, orchestrating every move, making sure we felt the weight of every secret buried beneath layers of lies. Suddenly, the mystery wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about the present, about survival. At the same time, a new discovery shattered everything we thought we knew. A faded diary emerged, belonging to the victim from the murder on that VHS tape. Except, as we flipped through the pages, the story inside didn't match what the police report said or what my wife's memories hinted at. There were contradictions, entries that suggested alliances, betrayals, and motives no one had suspected. Names appeared that we hadn't heard before, shadowy figures who weren't just bystanders, but active players in a dangerous game. And as we tried to piece together these conflicting accounts, the line between friend and foe blurred. Could the victim have been involved in something darker than just being a helpless bystander? Was the murderer really the villain, or was there someone else pulling strings behind the scenes? Every answer seemed to open new questions, making the puzzle more complex and the stakes impossibly high. Meanwhile, the people around us began to act strangely. Neighbors who once smiled politely now avoided eye contact, friends who offered help suddenly grew distant, and the childhood friend, whose intentions I had doubted before, disappeared without a trace. There were whispers of old grudges and secret dealings connected to families in the neighborhood, and rumors that the murder was just the surface of a deeper, more sinister past involving corruption and cover-ups. I found myself questioning everyone's motives. Was someone pretending to be an ally while leading us into danger? Was there a betrayal waiting to be uncovered within our own circle? The paranoia crept in, mixing with the fear, making it impossible to know who to trust. The tension inside our home grew unbearable as strange things started happening. Late-night phone calls with silence, shadows flickering outside the windows, and unexplainable disturbances that left us on edge. My wife's nightmares worsened, blurring the lines between memory and reality, as if the past was reaching through the veil of time to warn us or maybe punish us. And in the middle of it all, the threats escalated. More notes, more warnings, and an eerie message scrawled on the wall of our basement. Some truths are meant to stay buried. It was a haunting reminder that the secrets we sought to uncover were dangerous, maybe deadly. As the story spirals deeper, the stakes aren't just about solving a murder anymore. They're about protecting the people we love from shadows that refuse to stay in the past, about confronting betrayals that cut deeper than any wound, and about facing a truth that could destroy everything if it ever came to light. And the more we dig, the more we realize this isn't just a story about one family or one crime. It's about a whole community wrapped in lies, secrets, and fears that stretch across generations. And just when we think we might finally see the edge of this darkness, a new player emerges from the shadows. Someone who knows more than they're letting on, and who makes it clear that the truth will come at a price none of us are ready to pay. The mystery has become bigger than us, more dangerous than we imagined, and the only question left is, how far are we willing to go before the past swallows us whole? The moment everything changed came without warning, like a sudden snap in the quiet tension that had been building for weeks. One evening, I was driving home from work when I noticed a car following me, just a few cars behind, keeping the same slow pace no matter where I turned or how fast I sped up. At first, I thought it was just coincidence, but then the headlights flickered repeatedly, like a silent message I couldn't ignore. My heart pounded in my chest as I tried to stay calm, weaving through familiar streets while my mind raced, wondering who was watching me and why. The paranoia that had been simmering quietly now boiled over, making every shadow outside my window seem like a threat waiting to strike. By the time I pulled into our driveway, the car was still behind me, then suddenly vanished, leaving an empty silence that was far worse than any noise. Inside the house, the atmosphere was thick with unease. My wife sensed it too. Her eyes darted nervously at every creak and whisper, her hands trembling as she clutched the arms of the chair. We both knew this wasn't just about uncovering an old mystery anymore. Someone didn't want us digging any deeper, and now, that danger wasn't just a vague threat. It was real, closing in around us. The journal that had mysteriously disappeared, the anonymous notes, the watching eyes, all pieces of a puzzle that had turned into a trap. And then the unthinkable happened. My sister-in-law, who had been quietly helping us from the sidelines, suddenly disappeared without a trace. One day she was there, calling to check in, and the next, her phone went straight to voicemail. Her friends hadn't seen her, and no one had any clue where she had gone. It was like she had been erased from our lives, pulled into the shadows that haunted this entire story. That disappearance was a brutal awakening. It forced me to face a truth I had been trying to push aside. We were in serious danger. The house, the tape, the past, it was all part of something far bigger and darker than I ever imagined. Nights became restless battles against my own racing thoughts, tangled between fear, guilt, and an overwhelming need to protect my wife and the people we loved. Every creak in the house, every unexpected knock at the door, every whisper of a movement outside became an echo of the unknown. I found myself watching our windows, checking the locks over and over, wondering if the people who sent the threats were just outside, waiting for us to slip. What terrified me the most wasn't just the threat of physical harm, but the creeping doubt. Could I trust anyone anymore? Was the childhood friend really who she claimed to be, or was she playing a part in this dangerous game? Was the local historian truly trying to help, or was he hiding something darker beneath his friendly facade? And what about my wife? Was her memory reliable, or had trauma twisted her recollections, making it impossible to separate fact from fear? I grappled with these questions daily, feeling myself spiral into a world where every truth was suspect, every motive hidden. The weight of the mystery pressed down on us like a storm cloud ready to burst. And just when I thought I could bear no more, another chilling sign arrived, an unmarked package on our doorstep containing a single VHS tape, worn and unlabeled. It was the kind of package that screamed warning without words, a reminder that the past wasn't done with us yet. Inside the tape was a new recording, footage that was grainier, darker, and more unsettling than anything we had seen before. Faces blurred in the shadows, voices whispering names that sent shivers down my spine, and a final frame that froze on the outline of a figure standing just outside our house, watching, waiting. In that moment, I understood that this mystery wasn't just a story to tell. It was a fight for survival. The past had claws, and they were digging into our present, threatening to pull us under. The questions multiplied faster than answers could come. Who was behind these messages and disappearances? What had my wife truly witnessed as a child, and why did it still matter so much? Were we merely pawns in a game we never agreed to play? And most terrifying of all, was there any way out before the darkness consumed us all? The road ahead was unclear, shadows thickening around every step. But one thing was certain, this story was far from over, and the next move could change everything. As you watch and listen, I want you to feel that urgency, that creeping fear, because this isn't just a mystery, it's a race against time. And in this race, every second counts. Just when the weight of all the fear, the threats, and the unanswered questions seemed unbearable, everything shifted in a way I never saw coming, a twist so profound that it forced me to question not just the mystery itself, but the very people closest to me. We had been consumed by the hunt for the truth, piecing together faded memories, grainy footage, and cryptic warnings, convinced that the VHS tape buried in the wall was the key to exposing a dark secret from my wife's childhood. But the deeper we dug, the more I realized that what we thought was the story, the murder, the hidden past, the mysterious threats, was only a fragment of a far more complicated and unsettling reality. It was my wife's childhood friend who broke the silence one evening, reaching out after weeks of avoidance. She showed up at our door unexpectedly, her face pale and eyes darting nervously, carrying an envelope heavy with documents that would change everything. Inside were photos, but these weren't of our family or the neighborhood. They were of my wife, years older, meeting secretly with a man whose identity sent a chill down my spine. Alongside the images were letters and recordings that revealed something no one could have guessed. My wife had been part of something she'd never told me, something tied to that old murder, but not as a helpless witness. She'd been involved in a secret pact, an agreement made long ago by adults she trusted to protect her, but which ultimately ensnared her in a dangerous game of silence and betrayal. This revelation upended everything I thought I knew about her and the story we were chasing. The VHS tape wasn't just a record of a crime witnessed. It was part of a cover-up, a carefully orchestrated effort to hide the truth from the world. The threatening notes, the missing evidence, the vanished people, they weren't just random acts of intimidation. They were pieces of a puzzle designed to protect someone powerful, someone connected to the people my wife had once trusted the most. It wasn't just about protecting a murder secret. It was about shielding a legacy built on lies, manipulation, and fear. Suddenly, the friendly local historian, who had offered to help us understand the town's dark past, appeared in a new light. His knowledge was no accident. He was a guardian of that secret history, ensuring the past stayed buried. The childhood friend who had come back into my wife's life was not just a friend at all, but someone with a hidden agenda, someone who had watched and waited for the right moment to control the narrative. The neighborhood whispers of corruption and cover-ups weren't just rumors, they were warnings. This twist didn't just complicate the mystery, it made me realize that I'd been looking at the wrong story all along. The real danger wasn't just the murder on the VHS tape, it was the layers of deception woven around it, hiding the truth behind a mask of innocence and lies. And the most terrifying part was knowing that the person I'd trusted most, the woman I loved, had a part in this shadowy past she had kept locked away, possibly to protect herself or others, but at a cost that none of us were prepared to pay. Now, as the pieces fall into place, The stakes are higher than ever, and the questions become even more urgent. Who really killed that night, and why? What is the secret my wife has been hiding, and how far will those protecting it go to keep it from coming to light? And in a story filled with betrayal, threats, and mysteries, can anyone be trusted? Not even those closest to us? This isn't just a tale of an old VHS tape or a forgotten murder anymore. It's a story about the dangerous power of secrets, the sacrifices people make to keep them hidden, and the devastating consequences when those secrets refuse to stay buried. As you watch, remember that the truth isn't always what it seems, and sometimes the darkest mysteries lie within the people we think we know best. The moment everything came crashing down was unlike anything I could have prepared for. After months of piecing together shattered memories, dodging threats, and unraveling a tangled web of lies, I found myself standing face to face with the person who had been pulling the strings all along. It wasn't a stranger lurking in the shadows or some distant figure from my wife's past. It was someone we thought was an ally, someone who had quietly orchestrated the entire nightmare to protect a secret far darker than any of us imagined. The confrontation was electric. Every word spoken carried the weight of years of betrayal, fear, and desperation, and the air crackled with the tension of truths too painful to hide any longer. Standing in the dimly lit room, the walls closing in around us like a trap, I realized this wasn't just about uncovering a murder from decades ago. It was about confronting the poisonous legacy that had haunted our family and community for generations. As the villain laid bare the chilling motivations behind the murder, the cover-ups, and the threats, their voice calm but icy, I could feel the fragile threads holding my sanity together start to unravel. The VHS tape, the vanished evidence, the hidden alliances, they were all pieces of a meticulously crafted deception designed to protect power and control. What hurt the most wasn't the violence itself, but the revelation that people we trusted had betrayed us, that innocence had been sacrificed for silence, and that my wife's childhood had been shaped by a world far crueler than we had ever imagined. I watched the raw emotion flicker across her face, pain, anger, and finally, a fierce determination as years of suppressed memories came rushing back, fueling a resolve that no threat could break. But the climax wasn't just a battle of words. It was a psychological war, a fight to reclaim truth from the shadows. As accusations flew and secrets spilled, the room became a battleground of wills, each revelation twisting the knife deeper into wounds that never had a chance to heal. Then, in a moment that no one saw coming, the villain's carefully constructed facade shattered, revealing a fracture, a hidden guilt, a crack in their armor that hinted at something far more complicated. In that fragile moment, I saw not just a monster, but a deeply human tragedy, a reminder that the line between victim and villain can blur when secrets fester in darkness. Just as I thought the story had reached its breaking point, the final piece of evidence surfaced, a recording, lost among the chaos, that revealed the truth not just about the murder, but about the relationships, the betrayals, and the choices that had shaped everything. The recording was raw, unfiltered, and it upended everything we thought we knew, forcing us to question the very foundation of the narrative we had built. The final twist was devastating. The true killer wasn't who anyone expected, and their motives were entangled in a complex mix of love, fear, and sacrifice that left us reeling. It was a revelation that changed the meaning of the entire mystery, casting long shadows over the people we thought we understood. As the dust settled and the truth finally emerged into the light, I felt a weight lift, but also a deep sadness, knowing that some wounds would never fully heal. The journey through darkness had forced us all to confront uncomfortable realities about trust, memory, and the cost of secrets. And though the mystery was solved, its impact lingered like a ghost, a reminder that the past, no matter how deeply buried, always finds a way to demand justice. This was more than a story about an old VHS tape or a forgotten murder. It was a journey through the darkest corners of the human heart, a testament to resilience, and a stark warning about the price we pay for silence. And just when we thought it was over, one last secret slipped through the cracks, a clue so subtle, yet so powerful it promised that the story was far from finished, leaving us with a haunting question. What else was hidden in the shadows, waiting to be uncovered? After everything we endured, the revelations, the betrayals, the nights filled with fear and uncertainty, there came a moment, quiet and almost surreal, when the chaos finally seemed to settle. The mystery that had consumed our lives was no longer a tangled web of shadows and secrets, but a story laid bare, raw and painful, yet somehow freeing. We had uncovered the truth behind that old VHS tape, confronted the darkness that had haunted my wife since childhood, and faced the people who tried to keep the past buried forever. But even with answers in hand, the sense of closure felt fragile, like the calm after a storm that might return at any moment. The truth didn't erase the scars, but it gave us a foundation on which to start rebuilding, a chance to find peace amid the echoes of a haunted history. My wife and I spent countless hours talking through memories and pain, learning to trust each other in new ways, and slowly healing from wounds we hadn't realized were still so raw. The community around us began to shift as well, with some neighbors opening up, others quietly distancing themselves, and the town grappling with the shadows its past had cast for decades. The secrets we unveiled sparked conversations, forced reckonings, and left many questioning what else might be hidden beneath the surface of their own lives. The VHS tape, once a symbol of fear and mystery, became a catalyst for truth, a reminder that even the darkest stories deserve to be told and heard. Yet, despite the progress, a lingering question remained. What else lay hidden in the corners we hadn't yet explored? The final evidence, the anonymous notes, and the mysterious disappearances all pointed to a truth that was never fully within our grasp, a puzzle with pieces still missing. That last, subtle clue we found, the one that no one saw coming, hinted at deeper layers, stories waiting to be uncovered, and perhaps even more shadows that refused to stay in the past. It was a quiet reminder that some mysteries don't end neatly. They ripple outward, touching lives in ways we can't always understand or control. As I look back on this journey, I realize that this story was never just about solving a crime or unearthing a secret VHS tape hidden in a wall. It was about confronting the past with courage, about the fragile nature of memory, and about the resilience it takes to face the unknown. It was about love tested by fear, trust shattered and rebuilt, and the enduring human spirit that seeks light even in the darkest places. And for anyone watching this story unfold, I hope it serves as both a warning and a beacon, that sometimes the past will find you, but how you face it can make all the difference. So as you sit with this story now, ask yourself, what truths are hidden in your own life, waiting to be uncovered? What secrets might be lurking in the walls around you, quietly shaping your reality? And when the darkness comes calling, will you have the strength to face it, no matter the cost? Because sometimes the scariest mysteries aren't the ones on old VHS tapes. They're the ones we carry inside us.